Kyra in Georgia. Pronouns are she, her. Kyra, you are on the line. What's going on? What do you want to talk about today?
Hi, Arden. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
So I had a question because recently I was on Facebook and there was a post that said, I quote, "This can't be real life blackface," right? And the picture that was posted along with it was of a person that had like this huge afro that took up about 50% of the photo, the like large gold hoop earrings, chunky gold chain that said bitch. I mean, the brown lipstick, heavily tanned skin. And there was without a doubt that I would say that this person was trying to portray kind of that stereotypical Foxy Cleopatra Blackness. And this person was also someone who I would say was a trans woman who I would assume kind of transitioned later in life because they still had the kind of stereotypical or like male features, broad shoulders, like the shadow, things like that. And I was kind of struggling on how to think about this as someone who is Black, and I also think of myself as an ally, like for the queer community. Like I felt supportive for them being a trans woman, but then I felt like they were also cosplaying Blackness, right? Like, and I didn't know how to think about it because in my head. Oh yeah.
Sorry, I think that like it's almost problematic to lump that action in with the fact that they're trans. Like, yeah, they might incidentally be trans, but I think their action of if they are portraying a negative stereotype, like that's a separate action. Like I think trans people should be equally held accountable for their actions, even though they're trans. Like we're not exempt from like social consequences of our actions. And I think even if this is a trans person, like I don't think these necessarily even go together. Like I think it's okay to say this person, and you don't even have to call attention to the fact that they're a trans person. It's like this person is, you know, dressing up like a stereotype that is seen as negative for this community, and I think it's appropriate to call attention to that. And I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with this person's transness.
Yeah.
I also don't think that it has anything to do with their transness. It just so happened to be that in this post, right, people are saying, oh, that's a white man in a dress. And I'm kind of like, oh, whoa, don't do that. But then the other side of me is like, but you're still pretending to be Black. And I didn't know how to like respond because I would normally be like, you know, like, hey guys, y'all are doing too much. But then it was like, but they also are doing the whole Black thing. And I mean, I went and I checked their Facebook profile, and this goes back. This is not something that I would say that they're pretending to be. And so I was like, is this somebody that thinks of themselves as a Black person? You know, like I think about that German, I think she was German woman with the really large breasts that she took it to a whole nother level. I don't know if y'all know who I'm talking about, but
I kind of want to jump in
trying to be Black.
Like, I think that number one, I also like, was there specifically like, did this person's post like mention that they are trans, or was it an assumption that you made that they are? Because I have some thoughts here additionally.
I would say that based upon like the history of their Facebook profile, right? Because I looked back, because I honestly thought it was a joke at first, but there's a couple of years going back of this. I would say they're clearly trans, but there is like a darkening of the skin over time to where they are now.
Because my question is because my question too is like, is this somebody in drag maybe going a bit too far with cultural appropriation in a drag performance? Because like I do see some issue with just assuming that somebody is a trans person based on presenting as a gender that they weren't assigned. And so I wonder if this can be, this is a multi-layered situation, definitely, and I don't think that it's appropriate to appropriate somebody else's culture and take on stereotypes of another group. But I do think there's maybe some layers of this conversation being missed and some details that maybe we're throwing in assumptions on that aren't necessarily accurate.
I might be assuming the transracial or I don't know if they would identify as transracial or black. I wouldn't know as far as skin color or race how they would identify, but I would strongly assume that they identify as transgender, considering the history on their Facebook posts, right? These are not just photos in drag. I've been to enough drag shows to know, right? But this is somebody that clearly throughout their daily life, because their Facebook profile was completely wide open. It wasn't closed in any way. So it was here they are at the grocery store with a friend. This is not
sure. So if
drag.
I can jump in here, I think that if what you're asking is, is it okay to say hey, it's fucked up and you're being kind of racist, but you're also trans, and we don't need to misgender the racist person, we can just point out that they're racist and call it a day, then yeah, I'm totally on board with that. You can, this is a thing that happens all the time to trans people, where one trans person will do something bad and they'll be did you guys see this trans person did a bad thing? Should we be concerned about trans people? And it's yes, minority groups can still do bad things. That's not surprising at all. People are people.
Right. I don't want y'all to misunderstand my question. I didn't quite get to it. I apologize. I wanted to give you all a little bit of backstory, but the question was more about, is there any kind of maybe scientific, or is there something more to the possibility of transracialness being a thing, either in the medical community, psychology? Is this something that I'm going to have to
No, and I think using the transracial argument as part of the trans conversation is really poor. And a lot of people will use it dishonestly. That's the main reason this even gets thrown out, is a way to say, well, isn't being transgender just like being transracial? And would you accept somebody being transracial or somebody identifying as an alien or somebody identifying as an animal? They'll throw a lot of those things together and use it to make trans people look less normal. And
right,
so I don't think it's appropriate to I don't think it's scientifically a thing. But I don't.
And you don't think that there are arguments that align in the same way, right? Because we talk about people who are transgender that feel as though they identify with being a woman, right? And that's coming from the brain, right? But gender being something that's socially constructed, right? Race is also something that's socially constructed.
Yeah, but there's
I was trying to think about it myself, and I was having a hard time in my own brain, right? So that's kind of why I called.
Yeah, I get you. So there's a big difference here, right? I mean, I agree, race and gender are both socially constructed concepts, but when we're talking about race, we're talking about something external and heritable that is projected onto you and constructed around that. When we're talking about gender identity, we're talking about a deeply held internal sense of yourself, and not a deeply held belief in the sense of I believe in the flying spaghetti monster. We're talking a deeply held sense of your right and left-handedness. It's more akin to an alignment of the brain. It's definitely, they're completely different constructs, and while they might both be in a sense social constructs, and we can talk about the similarities therein, they're not similar in the sense of somebody can identify into a race, because race is again an external heritable thing. And we're not seeing the same things with, there is some heritable, I think, evidence with regard to LGBT identities in general, but it's a pretty weak effect. And generally speaking, we're talking about an internal sense of self. Race isn't an internal sense matrix. We're talking about the your skin color, quite literally.
Right. Okay. Well, I really appreciate y'all taking my call, because I was kind of like, this just happened yesterday, and I was like, oh my God, it's tomorrow's Thursday, I can call. And this is my first call ever, so I didn't know if it's going to be good or not, but I appreciate you guys. Like, thank you so much for taking my call.
Yeah, thanks, Kyra. Have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, Pokemon Master and Executive Producer on The Line. Would you like to support a specific show on The Line or The Line in general? There are special tiers on our Patreon and in our channel memberships. You can do just that. By the way, you could consider leaving a super thanks down below. You could also like, subscribe, and leave a regular comment. All of these are great. Now, I'm going to get back to crushing loneliness, but while I do that, why don't you check out one of these?